everybody. This is Scott Bunce, and thanks for joining me again. Um, Today, I've got a very unique speaker and author that I've had some personal experience with, Michael Julian. Michael, welcome.
Well, thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. Great to be here with you.
Yeah, and Michael, I know your expertise is in active shooter events, and you've got a lot of expertise, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about your background and what you do.
Sure. Well, my father started our company in 1967 after being in the military and then law enforcement. We're a full service private investigation and security firm doing corporate and business investigations and then workplace violence and risk mitigation, security, executive protection for, VIPs and high net worth individuals and celebrities and stuff like that. I created my program, A.L.I.V.E, which is an acronym for Assess, Leave, Impede, Violence, and Expose, back in 2013, so 10 years ago, because I was getting really frustrated and upset watching good people die at the hands of bad people, and they didn't know what to do. And I felt like I did, and I wanted to help them. So I created the program and I started teaching them.
Absolutely. And again, you gave a speech to my Vistage group, and I was so impressed. I thought we could share some of your tactics and thoughts along the way and share it with others and let them learn about what you do and some of the unique techniques that you train on.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to.
So please share some of your thoughts about how you approach an active shooter scenario and anything else that you'd like to share.
Well, one of the things that's kind of unique about my methodology and my training program is everybody teaches run, hide, fight, which is a physical way to respond to an active shooter. The problem that I found in my research is so many people become so overwhelmed and overcome by fear and the idea of never seeing their loved ones again that they slip into this victim mentality, get paralyzed, and then either don't do anything at all or the wrong thing. So if it's great to know how to run, hide, fight, but if your brain is not prepared to tell your body how to run, hide, fight, it's not going to do you any good. So in my program, we teach equal parts of mindset and method. The method is important, but the mindset gets your body ready to carry out the method. So it's effective. I teach security and survival mindsets, which is security is preparing and learning and teaching and practicing and drilling on how to stay safe. And then when an event happens, then all of the stuff you learned in the security mindset, you actually carry out in the survival mindset. So honestly, when it comes down to it, I teach empowerment. And a big part of my training, as you know, I go through case studies and I talk about the different active shooter, active killers in history and where they're coming from. They have a very specific psychological profile and a very specific goal, and that is to kill as many people possible in a short amount of time as possible, because they know that they don't have a lot of time. Law enforcement has learned to engage immediately, except unfortunately that hasn't happened in every situation, and people died when they didn't have to. But modern law enforcement knows that the proper way to deal with an active shooter is to engage them immediately. As soon as they do, they're either going to shoot back at the law enforcement, try and flee, or more often than not, they're going to kill themselves. But whatever, as long as they're not trying to hurt us anymore. So in a nutshell, that's kind of where I'm coming from. I went into a little bit more psychological. Like I said, it's empowerment. So many people just feel like somebody has a gun and they're shooting and killing people around them. There's no way they can get out of it. That's not true. You have to take action. You have to make up your mind to survive. And hopefully you've created a plan. That's another thing that we teach is to create a plan, because when's the worst time to create a plan? When you need it. So we create the plan prior. So when you need it, it's there and you can enact it and focus on survival rather than perishing.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons that your speech was so hit home to me, Michael, was I had a son that went to Columbine High School.
Mm.
Now it was well after the Columbine event, but I distinctly remember he came home after not knowing about. We actually lived in Belgium when this all went down. We came back and moved to Colorado. for about a 10, 12-year period of time. He wasn't aware of what was going on. He goes to Columbine, gets the stories, is shown specific areas where it happened, and it just hit home for me. And I think some of the takeaways in listening to your presentation is there were several things that could have been done had the children had some type of training, and the same thing applies for an active shooter in a business. And maybe you can give us some of those key methods and some of the things that you preach along the way.
Sure. I'll just go over the 5 steps. That's the best way to tell you that the way of thinking and the methodology is based on the 5 steps of A.L.I.V.E. The A is for assess. Probably the most important step, and it's the only step that's not physical. It's actually, it starts out and is mostly mental. When you hear shots and you realize that it is probably gunshots, or you know of somebody with a knife or a baseball bat or whatever that's trying to hurt you, you make that assessment. You now focus on what you need to do next, rather than going, I'm going to die, and think about your children and your loved ones and never seeing them again, because it's very debilitating. And then, knowing that's what's going to happen, you say to yourself, okay, I have got to go into survival mode and do whatever it takes to get home to the people I care about. And you now look at your situation and you decide, can I leave? Which is like run, hide, fight. Can I leave? Or if the door's blocked, can I impede the killer's ability to get to me by creating time and space? They know they don't have much time. Remember, their goal is to kill as many people possible in a short amount of time as possible, because they know law enforcement's on the way. They don't have a lot of time. They're not going to spend a lot of time trying to get through a door or a barricade to get to you. They're going to move on to easier targets. But if they can't do that because suddenly they're right there, then you have to be ready to commit violence against them. And that's a hard pill to swallow for some people. Some people just have a real problem with violence. Well, I understand that, and I'm compassionate towards that. But if it means you dying or not, then you have to come to terms with the idea of committing violence against somebody. And then the E is for, well, we'll get to that in a minute. So you consider those 3 and you say, which of those 3 can I do? And you decide that's what I'm going to do. And you immediately call 911, because we've got to get that clock ticking, because we've got to get law enforcement on the way, because law enforcement showing up 15 seconds earlier could stop the deaths of multiple people, right? Because he's going to focus not on killing you, but on leaving, on engaging law enforcement, or killing themselves. So once you've assessed, you know what's happening, you figure out, this is what I'm going to do. You're calling 911 as you're doing it. Then you get to the L, which is leave, like a run. You're going to leave, get as far away as you can, as quickly as you can, and don't stop until you're safe. If you can't leave because there's no way to get out, you're going to find a place, whatever, a copy room, a broom closet, any kind of room or any kind of structure that you can create time and space to make it difficult or impossible for that person to get to you. And then, of course, and this has happened in several classrooms, if somebody bursts through the door with a gun and you happen to be the one closest to them, you might have to, look, you're going to get shot and killed if you do nothing. At least if you do something, you may be able to thwart that attack. You might have to grab them, attack them, shove a pencil in their eye, hit them over the head with a fire extinguisher, whatever it takes to neutralize that threat. And so those are the 3 things you can do. And then the E is for expose your position, because we know that there may be a second shooter. They may have gone down the hall and now they're coming back. You haven't heard shooting in a while. It may not be over. If you're not in a safe place and you still want to evacuate, you've got to do that very carefully, because you don't want to run into them. Also, you don't want to go running around, a corner, and suddenly law enforcement's there and they're ready to go and they accidentally shoot you, which has happened. So you've got to expose your position very carefully. Those are the 5 steps of A.L.I.V.E.
Wow. So you've been in this game since your father started it. And
16 years old is when I started.
yeah, that's amazing. Any stories of great survival that's happened based off of the training that you and your father have produced?
Well, I've got one that's pretty huge. A woman named Liz Moreno was a student of mine in 2014. And in 2017, she contacted me and said that she had been caught in the middle on the field in front of the stage of the Route 91 Country Music Festival at Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. And she said when the shooting started, everybody dove on the ground. And she said at that moment, she realized, wait a minute, I've had training this. I know what to do. I'm going to follow my training. So she turned to her boyfriend and said, we've got to go. We got to get out of here. And he said, no, it would be safer laying here, sheltering in place, which was the worst thing possible because the gunfire was coming from an elevated position. So there was actually a better angle if they were laying down than if they were standing up.
Mm-hmm.
She said, no, I know what to do. We've had training. We need to go. So he said, okay. The shooting stopped. They jumped up and grabbed hands and took off running. And I've got a picture that I show in my presentation of that field in front of the stage where she was, and it's littered with dead bodies. That was the dead bodies. That's not the ones that were already taken off the field that were still bleeding. So there is a possibility, if not a probability, that she would have died had she stayed laying there. You know, having children is the most profound, meaningful moment of my life, but having someone tell you that they're here today because of something you did, your training or whatever, that's way up there. And that really solidified my passion and commitment to getting the word and getting this message and this methodology out there to the masses, because someone said, you saved my life. Well, if I did it once, maybe we can do it again. And I've got over 160 trained certified instructors throughout the world, all the way to Australia, Canada, Mexico, teaching this course. And I believe that there will be another day when somebody says, hey, I was in that class, no matter who taught it. And because of that class, I was confronted with violence and I made a decision that I would not have made otherwise, that saved my life or made me safer or made me feel better. I just felt more confident in my abilities and wasn't overcome by fear. So, and that's a pretty heavy duty one, a testimonial from somebody that said that the training actually saved their life.
Michael, I'm sure that's gratifying, because I don't think the average person is thinking about what they're going to do next. The average person is watching the news and just getting more scared, and which could paralyze them, which is probably the worst thing that they could do.
Absolutely the worst thing they can do.
Any other suggestions that you have for people that are watching?
Yes, if you don't know how to defend yourself in a physical situation, learn how. I always ask people in my classes, who here knows any kind of self-defense training? And 3/4 of or more don't. There's two reasons you need it. One, you need to physically know how to defend yourself. And two, knowing you know how to defend yourself will give you a certain amount of confidence, like it did Liz Moreno. Liz Moreno said, wait a minute, I know what to do. I'm going to do it. If you're in a situation and you need to know how to defend yourself physically, knowing how to do it is great. And knowing that you know how to do it is even better. In fact, what I tell women is, if you're walking through a dark parking lot at night and you have the confidence of having a weapon or the knowledge of how to stay safe, you're not going to look like an easy target, and bad guys are going to look elsewhere. So you're actually avoiding a situation, which is the best way to do it. You know, if you can avoid any kind of situation where there's violence involved, then having to survive it once it starts, it's way better to avoid it than have to, figure a way out of it.
Michael, do you recommend any particular defense training as something that, if somebody had to start from scratch, that you think would work well?
Well, given my upbringing and training and experience, I would always defer to or default to having a weapon, preferably a firearm, which is not popular in every state. But if you are an experienced firearms user, you are going to be in a lot better shape to defend yourself against somebody with a firearm. But if that's not an option, I would just say any form of self-defense. Remember, it teaches you confidence and it teaches you understanding of situations. So you will feel empowered. So I don't have a particular one, Krav Maga or Taekwondo or karate or Kung Fu or any of that stuff. I would just say, find something that you enjoy and learn how to do it. You don't have to become a grandmaster. You just have to learn enough to be able to use it to protect yourself.
And gain some confidence. I think your comment about walking through the parking lot with an air of confidence puts you in a different state altogether. As long as you're doing something and it boosts what you've got. I think that's great words of advice. Michael, if somebody wants to learn more, take a class, get to know you, learn about your books, can
Sure.
you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. The website is activeshootersurvivaltraining.com. It's pretty easy. It's a long one, but it's easy to remember, activeshootersurvivaltraining.com. There you can buy my book. It's a bestseller on Amazon, 10 Minutes to Live. And I talk about why that's so important, the 10 minutes. We've got online learning programs. You can take it from your computer. We can do a webinar, or we do in-person training for companies and houses of worship and schools and organizations all over the world. I go to a lot of conferences involved in security. So, but activeshootersurvivaltraining.com, you can, or just Google A.L.I.V.E active shooter. We're all over the internet. We're a nationwide, we're a worldwide, planet-wide company that people know about because we know that it works and they know that it works. So all you got to do is Google A.L.I.V.E active shooter and you can find me pretty much anywhere. And I'm all over social media. So by all means, follow us on social media.
Great. Well, Micah, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Again, I personally went through the class. I feel better by going through the class. I think everybody else getting to know what you and your group train is a plus for anybody. So thanks again, and we'll talk to everybody soon.
Sounds
All the
good.
best.
Thanks, Scott.